you're on. You're live.
All righty, well, we're going to get started. Welcome to Saturday Night Live. We're glad you're here. And I see everybody survived 4th of July. Everybody have fun?
No.
Eh?
No.
No. Okay. All right, well, we're going to get started. So please welcome Paul. He's going to come read the 12 steps for us. Paul?
Good evening. We admitted that we were powerless over our problems and that our lives had become unmanageable. And the scripture with that is Romans 17. I know nothing good lives in me. I want to do what is right, but I can't. Step 2. We came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Philippians 2:13 says, God is working in you, giving you the desire and the power to do what pleases Him. Step 3. We made a decision to turn our wills and our lives over to the care of God. Romans 12:1 says, Dear brothers and sisters, I plead with you to give your bodies to God because of all He has done for you. Let them be a living and holy sacrifice, the kind He will find acceptable. Step 4. We made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Lamentations 3:40 says, Let us test and examine our ways. Let us turn back to the Lord. Step 5. We admitted to God, ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. James 5:16 says, Confess your sins to each other and pray for each other so that you may be healed. Step 6. We were entirely ready to have God remove these defects of character. James 4:10 says, Humble yourselves before the Lord, and He will lift you up in honor. Step 7, which is for July that we're working on today. We humbly ask God to remove our shortcomings. 1 John 1:9 says, If we confess our sins to Him, He is faithful and just to forgive us our sins and to cleanse us from all wickedness. Step 8, we made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Luke 6:31 says, Do to others as you would have them do to you. Step 9, we made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. Matthew 5:23 says, If you're presenting a sacrifice at the altar and someone has something against you, leave your sacrifice there at the altar, go and be reconciled to that person, then come and offer your sacrifice to God. Step 10, we continued to take personal inventory and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 1 Corinthians 10:2 says, If you think you are standing strong, be careful not to fall. Step 11, we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry it out. Colossians 4:2 says, Devote yourselves to prayer with an alert mind and with a thankful heart. Step 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to others and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Galatians 6:1 says, Dear brothers and sisters, if another believer is overcome by sin, you who are godly should gently and humbly help that person back into the right path and be careful not to fall into the same temptation yourself. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul. You're welcome.
All right, thank you, Paul. All right, we're going to keep it going. We're going to have, we're doing step 7 this week, and so we're going to have John come give the steps. Please welcome John.
We are doing step 7, and the question that I have chosen to do is clearing, or the thing I've chosen to do is clearing the mess. Scripture is Isaiah 57:12-19, and it reads, Now I will expose your so-called good deeds, none of them will help you. Let's see if your idols can save you when you cry to them for help. When a puff of wind can knock them down, if you just breathe on them, they fall over. But whoever trusts in me will inherit the land and possess my holy mountain. God says, rebuild the road, clear away the rocks and stones, so my people can return from captivity. The high and lofty one who lives in eternity, the Holy One, says this: I live in the high and holy place with those whose spirits are contrite and humble. I restore the crushed spirit of the humble and revive the courage of those with repentant hearts. For I will not fight against you forever. I will not always be angry. If I were, all people would pass away, and all the souls I have would pass away, all the souls I have made. I was angry, so I punished these greedy people. I withdrew from them, but they kept going on their own way, their own stubborn way. I have seen what they do, but I will heal them anyway. I will lead them. I will confront those who mourn. Let's see, and we'll go to the one question. The question is, have I developed enough humility from my experience in addiction to see that I need to let God work in my heart? Is there any doubt that self-reliance has kept God out? Yes, I have developed enough humility, I believe. No, there isn't. When self-reliance includes God, it is perfect. When it doesn't, it's chaos. And 2 is describe the difference between humiliation and humility. I don't know if I got this right, but humiliation is brought on by worldly happenings. Humanity is of God. That's all I've got. Have a blessed night.
Thanks, John. Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John. Everybody give John a hand. We are going to move on to the reflection, and Tommy's going to do that for us. Please welcome Tommy.
Tommy. Go Tommy.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
I put becoming humble enough to actually be in a place that I could see through the fog and deception of my addiction, to ask and see God remove the messy things from my life, and being able to function on a lot better set of priorities with less confusion and manipulation of thoughts is an extremely delightful place to be. So when true life events do come about that can be trying, it's easier to face and not resort to being scatterbrained while distancing myself from the issues, thinking it will just disappear. Sometimes it does disappear, yet it can come back and bite you. When God removes these things, they are gone for good. In the beginning, when I was told I must become humble, I confused that with humiliation, having had suffered a lot of humiliation growing up. I had to learn the difference, and that is okay with me now. Knowing the proper definition, I can now let God work his magic. And I have these said here. define humiliation and humility. So this was my picture for humility.
Can't see it.
And this is my one for humiliation.
Good.
That's all I have, thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, Tommy.
Welcome. All right, everybody give Tommy a hand. So, that was quick tonight, so Doug, you got some extra time. So, all right, everybody, please welcome Doug.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm gonna go.
Okay.
Thank you, Zach, and thank you, John and Tommy. And I want to thank John. He gets down here early and John usually adjusts the air conditioner, and he did, and then I adjusted it when I got down here because it felt a little cool, and then it felt like it got hot again. So I've readjusted, John, and you may need to check it and see if because how's the temperature to everybody? Is it better, Willie? Okay, because a while ago, Willie and I were hot. So, and plus I was running around here doing stuff. So, and I just appreciate all the help. And I looked up a couple of definitions here, John and Tommy, about on humility and humiliation. And this is my definitions that I looked up. And it's on humiliation is making someone feel ashamed. So that's kind of what all that pointing stuff was that you had there, blaming, shaming. I didn't mean to point at you, Lisa, but you looked at me right.
Sure, we know how this goes.
Yeah. Hey, I'm glad you're here. And so, and then, being humble is a freedom from pride or arrogance, is according to what the dictionary had to say. But I put down kind of my definition here of not putting others down or putting myself over others. How about that? That's being humble, right? And I think it's out of Romans, and I didn't look this up, but it just now hit my thinking that it talks about that we're not making ourselves greater than, and it indicates that we're also not making ourselves lower than anybody else. So because we're the same. We may have different gifts, we may have different talents, we may have different strengths, but as far as our humanly value is the same, and that we need to recognize that in each other. Okay? So this is an interesting topic out of the book, and John selected it. And I'm going to start off with the scripture that I really like the best out of this, and it is out of Isaiah. Let me find the right notes. I've got plenty of notes, but this page. It's out of Isaiah 57:18, and it's, I have seen what they do, but I will heal them anyway. I really like that emphasis. It goes on to say, and I will lead them, and I will comfort those who mourn. Right? Verse 18 again is, I have seen, this is God speaking here through Isaiah, I have seen what they do. Now what's going on here And I will probably make reference to it as I talk here in a minute, but I might as well go ahead and tell the story now because it's on my mind now. And that is Isaiah, they were bumping along and everybody thought they were doing okay because they were all doing their own stuff and they were very religious doing it. But it wasn't godly. It was just religious. Okay? And so something was going on in him, and he ended up in the temple, and the presence of God filled the temple, and he was overwhelmed with God's presence, and he saw in an instant how, well, his statement was out of the New Living Bible says, "I'm doomed." Anybody ever felt that way? Yeah. I'm doomed. And that's right out of the New Living Translation. And he says, "I am an unclean man with unclean lips, living in an unclean land with unclean people." In fact, I think it said they're filthy people. Because he recognized something that he hadn't recognized before. He had an aha moment. Does that make sense? Anybody here ever had an aha moment? Some people say come to Jesus moment. Okay, you recognize. You thought you had it covered up, but now you found out everybody was seeing it anyway. Type moment. You know what I mean? All right. Yeah. There's not much response to that one, was it? But so here Isaiah is, and that's the reason why, as John read some of the scriptures out of Isaiah, starting with earlier. Let's see where I want to go to this page. Out of verse 14, it says, God said, and he was speaking to Isaiah, he says, "Rebuild the road, clear away the rocks and the stones, so my people can return from captivity." And there's so much in that scripture because they'd been in captivity for so long, they didn't even really realize how much in captivity they were. Does that make sense? All right? It's kind of like maybe some of the stuff that we've been going through the last while, but added to everything that went on before. You know, and thank God, I guess to some degree, that He's given us the ability to adapt. You know what I mean? Because we have to adapt to survive. If you don't live, if you don't survive, you're not able to live, you don't go forward. You know, you don't stay in the game, you gotta stay in the game. And so here, and so we do our best, and it's kind of like that deal they talk about a frog. You put a frog in a bucket of water, and if you just slowly turn the heat up, the frog doesn't know it until he's dead. He just finally, he didn't realize it's, he's done for. Cooks him. Yeah.
Bob Hanks tonight.
Okay. And so here Isaiah was recognizing his sinfulness. How about that term? His sinfulness. And so, but the rest of the story here, as we go on into this. So if we're driving down the road, and it's a one-lane road, and it's our main path of life, and there's a tree or a telephone pole or something blocking it, well, what do? Well, you can turn around, go another way, and then forever never travel that road again because it's blocked. Or you decide that you're going to clear the rubble out of the road like Isaiah was talking about here. Or as step 7 is talking about, and that is that we're, where are we, where's step 7 at? There it is. We humbly ask Him to remove our shortcomings, that we go ahead and we finally say, I'm tired of what I've been dragging around and dealing with for so long that's costing me more than it's given me by a lot. And now I'm ready to do something about it. Does that make sense?
Amen.
So we decide we do something. We're saying, wait a minute, there was a bridge that got washed out a year ago or so, that was my main path to my house. And fortunately, we had the special road district that came in, and it took them about 3 weeks to fix it, and they fixed it. And then we had another rainstorm back then. We had a lot of water, and it washed it out again. And so it was several months that we had to drive several miles out of the way to get home, or to come to town, or to just about go anywhere. And so, but my point here is that the idea here is if we got stuff in our path that prevents us from living the life that we desire and we need to live, then we need to deal with it. Do we not need to deal with it? Is it in our best interest to deal with it? Okay? And that's what step 7 here is talking about, that we humbly ask Him to remove our shortcomings. And that sounds almost like a real passive statement. But the fact of it is, the steps 1 through 6 were basically all internal statements about dealing, and which was important for us to deal with on the inside of ourselves. Okay? Now step 7 and through step 12 is basically working on our behaviors, making changes in our behavior. We need to do the internal, okay, so that we can do the external. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. And so here we are, is how long am I going to let this rubble lie in my road? Shall I ask that question again? How long am I going to let this rubble? It's been there for so long, I'm kind of used to it.
Yep.
Right? Right?
Walking around it.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm not even sure that I don't, if I got rid of it, I'd miss it. It's kind of like, right? So when we finally come to the place that we recognize this stuff's in our path, in our life, in our way, it is, well, let's say it this way, it's holding me back. And if it's holding you back, it's holding us back.
Amen.
Right?
Yep.
Would you agree with that?
Yep.
Okay. All right. That wasn't in the script. So some information I got has given us 3 things that we can do to help ourselves to deal with this problem, okay? And the first one is go to God, all right? The second one is be real or honest. We'll be talking about that. And number 3 is don't turn back. There's so many times we sabotage ourselves by turning back, right?
Yep.
And we can even make convincing statements why we should turn back. I'm just going to let that settle a little bit. So, all right. So, number 1, go to God. It's hard to admit when we're struggling isn't it? Isn't it? It's hard to tell the truth when we're hurting. But oftentimes what we do is when we're hurting and we're struggling, we try to protect ourselves. We're afraid to go to God because we're afraid that He won't forgive us, right? Am I telling the truth? We're afraid He won't forgive us. Am I too heavy tonight? Okay. All right. So, and then we hide and we cover up, right? Okay, that's called denial. Anybody ever heard of denial, right? Yeah, but that's not the one I'm talking about. And so what we do is then we avoid the problem and we pretend that God didn't see it and that it's all right. And how does that work out for you? Yes, okay, all right. So what we need to do is we need to decide to seek God. See what was going on with Isaiah. It was not the best of times, but he didn't really realize what condition he and the country was in, and so he was in the temple, and finally was in a place where he could make a connection. Sometimes we do have to be willing to go to God and make the connection. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Right? I mean, He does come after you a lot of times. But that's usually kind of like, now this is a Doug theory here, all right? He does come after you, but it's kind of like rescue, right? But when I'm talking about going to Him instead of Him rescuing you, it's a different story. It's a different emotional, spiritual level. Does that make sense? Okay, so we need to go to Him. We need to admit that we're struggling because He already knows it. Okay, He already knows. And tell Him the truth. Okay, tell Him the truth. That's exactly what Isaiah did. He just said, "I'm doomed." Okay, right? I'm busted. I'm doomed. But yet, God has visited me here. I had a person just this week that felt like they were in a desert, my word, not theirs, a spiritual desert, not knowing what to do, but yet they themselves had communicated to me different events that they knew that God spoke to them, touched them, or intervened, showed up, okay? Whether it was a song, or whether it was a note, or whether it was something, okay? Oftentimes we just go right by those and we forget how God has intervened in our life. Would you agree with that? It's still pretty heavy, isn't it? Well, I'm kind of liking it though. Thanks for being here. And here lately, the last several, we've had some really good subjects and topics, but they've all been rather difficult for me to dig out and organize in my own thinking and spirit. But by the time I get here on Saturday night, I think I've kind of got it. And so anyway, hopefully this comes out good tonight. So how is it so far?
Good.
All right. I got one good. Okay. That's better than no kids. All right. So, number 2, we talked about being real, being honest. Honest to yourself, honest to God, honest to others, right? Honest to others. That's essential for our growth. Boy, we don't like that. I don't even like that, right? Because we want, there's a part of us that we want to do it by ourselves. you know, just some, or even say it's just me and Jesus. And we keep Jesus on the outside.
Growing hurts, so.
Growing does hurt. Growing does hurt. But it's a beneficial hurt. It's a whole lot better than destruction, pain, torture, suffering, you know, loss. We could just keep on going, but I get depressed if we keep on going, so. So anyway, what we have to do is we need to be honest. Honest with ourselves, honest with God, honest with somebody else. We need to make that connection. Got a question for you. Are you ready for a question? Are you ready? What prevents you from being honest? I'll ask it again.
Fear.
Fear?
Scared, yeah.
Fear? Okay. Do you want to be more specific?
Fear of being known for like exactly what your motives are.
Being known for exactly what your motives are.
You don't want someone to know exactly why you're doing something.
Okay. And why would you not want them to know your motives?
You're being shady.
You're being shady. Okay, all right, all right. Okay. Bam!
Love it.
You gotta explain it?
Well, if we're laying the cards out one at a time and real slowly.
Let's
So-
call a spade now.
Yes.
Being shady.
We're gonna come to some of that here in a minute, I think. That's good.
There's a real fear of change.
A fear of change.
If you go to God and say, I got a problem, the answer is gonna be some kind of change.
Oh, and we love anything but change, right?
Yeah, change is not good.
We want things better as long as I don't have to change.
Yep.
I got it. The world will change and I can stay the same, right?
There you go.
Yeah, how's that work out for us? Yeah.
Come to here.
That's here.
Okay, all right, so what prevents you from being honest?
Sometimes people don't want to know the truth. Even if you're willing to tell them the truth, they don't want to know.
They don't want to know.
Yeah.
Okay, we're talking about somebody else that they don't want to know the truth. That's what prevents them.
It's perfectly honest.
Yeah, I'm real honest all
So,
the
so
time.
that would just be somebody else's reaction to your truth.
About them, you gotta stay with me.
Yeah. You're not gonna tell why you're not honest.
Doug, I'm fine living in the fantasy land I live in. Can't live in it and get along.
How has it worked for you so far?
I'm here.
Yes, and what does that mean?
It hasn't worked that well for me.
Oh, okay, all right.
I think earlier in the book, you used the word delusion instead of fantasy.
Yeah.
I'm scared to let anybody know.
Excuse me?
I'm afraid to speak out to friends or family or Jesus when I do something
All
wrong.
right. And and that reason that you're afraid or scared to do so is what? Do you know?
Fear of humiliation.
Shame.
Yeah, of course, yeah. That.
Zach has his hand up. I think that's the first time he's ever raised his hand.
He learns that one, okay.
No? Okay. I'm not sure what that meant either.
I think a lot of times we don't want to be honest or afraid to be honest because we're worried about how others may perceive us if we tell our truth.
Yes.
And we may have history of when we attempted to tell our truth and it didn't go so well.
So having a safe person when we're talking about others is so important. And the trouble is, we don't know what a safe person is until we learn what a safe person is not, right?
Yep.
Isn't that kind of the way it works?
Yeah.
And it's sad, but in fact, we if we don't learn through education, we learn through experience. And experience is usually a knot on the head, or a knife in the back, or something.
The unsafe people are pretty easy to find.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
We take it a little deeper, then sometimes we have a relationship with somebody, and we really care about how that person thinks of us, and we don't wanna lose that relationship because they're a big support to us, then we may not wanna be honest, fear of loss and all those things like what we've been talking about, but, so sometimes even if you start out being honest with somebody, that changes because you can't bear the thought of losing that individual. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I do. Trouble is, my mind went into another area because I created a new topic area for Saturday night, and I entitled it, This Week's Thoughts and Quotes. And I had some things along that line that I didn't know whether I was going to talk about them.
There you go.
Well, Zach, you opened the door.
And so and it's about truth and honesty, and how we don't, we misinterpret and we don't understand, and our understanding oftentimes gets us hurt. And that's kind of what we're talking about here about with unsaved people. Because you can have people that they can be, let me get to my notes here and hopefully I'm more precise. They can be, well, let me just read this, okay? How about that? We'll back up and it says, the difference between honesty and truth. It's short though. And it says, a failure to recognize the difference leaves us exposed and gullible. Okay? Interested yet? Honesty. Expressing your feelings and opinions accurately. Honesty. All right? That sounds about right. Truth. Accurate perception of reality. An accurate perception of reality is truth. Okay? So you can be honest about how you feel in your opinions, but not be accurate with reality, right? But oftentimes we have a hard time breaking those apart. Does that make sense? Do I need to do that again?
Draw the picture.
Okay, honesty is expressing your feelings and opinions accurately, which we get that, yes, right? But just because that's your opinion doesn't mean it lines up with reality. It's just your opinion. It's just how you feel. Yeah, you feel that way. I agree with you. You feel that way. But that doesn't mean that that's based on any reality. Based on a factual truth.
Based on my reality.
It's based on your perception of your reality,
Yes.
okay? Which is not the same thing, by the way.
Why isn't
But we don't know that. Do what?
Why isn't it?
Yeah, that's that fantasy land you were talking about a while ago. And so, and I know this may be too much here, but truth is being accurate about your perception of reality. Now, and of course, that we could go down a big old rabbit hole there talking about reality, of course. And I'm not even sure what I was studying to put this in there because I don't know. I don't know that we started on this topic. And so let me finish it up. It says, we mistake honesty for truth. That's what we just talked about, right? Because, somebody can be, sincere and express their feelings, but that doesn't mean that it's accurate according to reality, right?
It may be your truth, but that doesn't mean it's real.
It is their, it is what they would say was their truth. And,
An altered perception of
it,
reality.
yeah, an altered perception of reality. And we see a lot of that nowadays, okay, all right? And and the rest of the statement is we mistake earnestness with honesty. Okay, being earnest is being emotionally passionate, into it, convinced, okay? They're earnest about it, but that doesn't mean that they're really being honest about it. Could be, but it doesn't mean they have to be. They could be, what was that terminology you used a while ago, Tommy?
Shady.
Shady? I think that's what went through my mind when all this came up. Wait a minute, we have another moment. Lisa held her hand up.
I know I'm being good. So,
I'm not, so.
well, I think that one of the things, the best example for me of what you're talking about is how sometimes we assign purpose or meaning to other people's behaviors and actions.
Uh-huh.
And so we believe.
Wait a minute, we
that
need to say that again.
We assign purpose and meaning to other people's actions and behaviors. And so
What does that mean?
well, that means some.
I mean, I know what that means, but I want to make sure everybody else knows, because I know everything, but go ahead.
Oh. Okay, well, I'll give an example of this one. It's the same, but Zach and I call it same but different. It's like when we first started dating, in my marriage, I only got rings and jewelry when they were cheating. So the first time Zach ever gave me jewelry, I freaked out. So it was the same, because I had assigned meaning to that action. I had assigned purpose to that action. And so my brain immediately went into panic mode. Even though this action was completely different, and the reality was, he wanted me to have something nice and pretty because he cared for me, but had a whole different meaning. But because I had assigned that meaning to that painful action, that caused me discomfort and pain in the moment, fear in that moment.
Good,
And
good.
so, I think we have to be careful. I have to be careful because a lot of my discomfort comes from assigning meaning to other people's actions, words, and behaviors. And so,
A lot of my discomfort, I know this is probably only pertains to you.
right,
A lot of my discomfort comes from assigning meaning to other people's actions and behaviors.
rather than.
And maybe even words, right?
Yeah. Rather than accepting that it is what they say it is, or even if I'm unsure, asking the question, what did you mean by that? Or what is this?
It means you don't ask the question, or you do ask the question?
Well, I don't. Instead of doing that, I just let it be, and then I find myself very frustrated, angry.
So then what would be the appropriate or healthy step to deal with that in that case? So that I'm clear, because I don't know everything.
To work on that for me personally, I try to use my.
Sarcasm, Brenda, sarcasm. Okay, all right. I've gotten notes on Facebook before about my sarcasm here at Saturday Night Live. I didn't recognize the sarcasm.
We need to get a sarcasm lot up there for you.
Yeah. And it'll be on most of the time.
I know.
Leave it on.
I feel like you don't understand our sarcasm, you shouldn't come down the stairs.
Always come downstairs.
Oh, we all love sarcasm, but, it is, for me, I try to use a lot of mindfulness when I'm working on this, and try to just be. I know that sounds odd, but instead of being angry, I just try to be in the moment. So just be present and accept that maybe I am discomforted, but why am I discomforted, and try to, that's a me thing. If somebody else does or says something, that's their stuff, but how we feel about it is ours. And so I use mindfulness to accept responsibility for, I made myself feel this way because I assigned meaning to this.
Catch it.
Catch it, check it, and change it. Yep, exactly.
That's good, Paul. And Lisa? That's good. And so we need to step into these things and ask ourselves the question, why do I feel this way? And what's the evidence behind that? And is it real, or is it a lie or distorted information, maybe? Which maybe is a little nicer way of saying lie, but basically means the same thing, right?
So in that case, you're lying to yourself. So a lot of people think, everybody hates me. Well, that's impossible. There's 7 billion people, 8 billion people in the world. Everybody doesn't know you, so everybody can't hate you.
Main person that you.
But you gotta look at the reality of it, and if you say something to me and it's sarcastic, and I know you, that I know that it's probably just sarcastic and you mean no injury to me at all whatsoever, but if somebody just like on the street says something sarcastic, I think, well, they hate me for whatever reason. Well, it was just the same thing, but with you, I have a relationship and an understanding. Well, that other person didn't intend to hurt me either, but I can run around all day, all folded up, worrying about what somebody else, and it's just not real.
And that's true, absolutely. And the issue, when it comes right down to it, lies with the individual that's feeling that way. Again, they have placed meaning to what other people say or what they've done based on their perception of themselves and the world around them, which means they don't like themselves. And I know from my own personal experience, I don't like me, so I know nobody else does, so stay away from me, and I'm gonna punish you if you get close.
And the big lie that you started with was God won't forgive you.
And God has forgiven you, He does forgive you, and you say, well, I'm a mess. Well, so was Isaiah. Is my point here tonight. Isaiah was a mess, and he didn't know he's a mess until he found out he was a mess. Does that make sense? And he was the priest. Okay? And he said, I'm doomed. Right? I got unclean lips. I'm filthy. Everybody's filthy. The whole land's filthy. Everybody's filthy. We're all screwed up, right? And he's right. And so what he did when he recognized that he did step one right there of what I said here, he leaned into it. He went forward. He revealed himself. The angel of God's mighty army showed up to me and is like, what do I do? And that's when he took a coal off the altar and he cleansed him. Okay? He actually, according to the scriptures, put that coal on his lips. Yes?
You were talking a while ago about, being willing to be honest, and what stops you from that. And, everybody's talking about fear. For me, a lot of the times, the thing that stops me from being honest is the fear of the pain. I know this pain. I know I'm comfortable in this, where I've been, because that's been the thing that protected me. So I've moved into this area, but I don't know that. And
it's more you're familiar than comfortable. But because when you get uncomfortable enough, then you go into phase 2 of your reaction, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, but I also think about, things. I do a lot of visualization. Everybody knows.
Yeah.
I talk in probably more parables than Jesus. But anyway, I envision, the beauty of a stained glass window, but you can't have a stained glass window without first breaking the glass. And so you have to, for me, if I acknowledge those broken pieces, I could put them together, and it may be a mess, but it doesn't mean it's not beautiful.
It's good. It's good. So he was willing to have this, as step 7 talks about, he have these defects of character removed. And yes, there can be some pain to it, but it's nowhere near the pain that we would have to endure or suffer if we stay in our mess. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
You agree with it cognitively, but emotionally, we don't know if we want to do it, right? I get it. We're just talking about it and see where we go. All right, so here we are. We did first, number 1 was go to God. Number 2 was be real. And there's three different things that we need to do to be honest before we can have honesty. One is to acknowledge our problem, which we basically been talking about. Acknowledge our problem. You can't address or change something until you acknowledge it. Okay? If you don't see it, you can't fix it, right? All right, and just because you see it, that doesn't mean that you can fix it, but you definitely can't fix it if you can't see it, right? So yeah, if you ignore it, you can't see it. So or you pretend that it's not there, which is basically you're turning your rationalization of saying, well, I'm just going to pretend I can't see it. It's kind of like putting the electric bill in the drawer and say, well, I can't see it right now, so it's not bothering me.
You won't be able to see it next month either.
So we have to recognize that, and that's that, you know, he saw that. Isaiah saw that. Next one is agree with God that what you've done is wrong. Isaiah recognized that. When we, instead of denying it, like we talked about a while ago, we have to be honest, we have to recognize it. You have to be willing to agree with God. Yes, you're right. I've got a problem. Okay? It's always, isn't it always better to agree with God?
Oh, yes.
But why do we always fight with God? Isn't that a great question? Oh, you thought you were the only one.
Not me.
So what we need to do is we need to be willing to let God show us and then let God help us, right? Instead of run like Adam and Eve when they messed up in the garden and set the pattern. When they messed up, they ran and hid. And we've been running and hiding ever since. Okay, number 3 on what we need to do to be honest. And I'm getting close to being done. Isn't that great? And so the pain is about over. Admit your struggles, at least to a safe person, to one safe person. All right? We need to have that one person that we can be honest with, and it really needs to be a safe person that will not judge you, will not condemn you. They understand you. They won't necessarily co-sign your BS. How about that?
I did that.
And so, but they're willing to ride that emotional roller coaster ride with you and help you. Okay, so those were the 3 things we needed to do to be honest. Now, not to be confused with the 3 things that we need to do to turn this around. The first one was go to God. The second one was to be real or to be honest. The third one is don't turn back. Don't turn back. Isaiah didn't go backwards when he found out, he went forwards. And he affected his generation. He tried to communicate God's truth, God's salvation to his people that God had given him. I like this next scripture here, and this is out of Isaiah 44:22. It says, I have swept away your sins like a cloud. I like that. I like that. Did you want to say something?
Yeah. Zach kind of started this direction a while ago, and I was going to say something, but we kind of circled back. When you're changing, you have to dig deep. A lot of people just want to give up a little bit of their garbage, but they want to hold back a little something. I did a study a while back, and they were talking about give up that last 10%. Don't hold back
That's
I
good.
mean, why would you give up the easy part and hold back the part that hurts you the worst?
Yes.
You know, you have to be willing to cleanse, to sweep it all away,
Yeah.
not just the easy part. And that's why you need somebody safe, so that you can give up that really dark, painful piece and not hold it back, give the whole 100%.
And that safe person doesn't judge you or condemn you. They love you. They may not love what you do, but they love you. Because you don't love what you've done, but you're not sure that you love yourself. But having somebody there that will love you helps do that last 10%.
And if you change it, you're a better person. You're not the person that did that.
That's correct. Isaiah 44:22, he says, I will sweep away your sin like a cloud. I have scattered your offenses like the morning mist. It's pretty wide range. Oh, return to me, and I have paid the price to set you free. I paid the price to set you free. You know, I think last session we were in here, I made the comment, I think it was I think that was 2 weeks ago, that I've kind of been rethinking the Old Testament idea about it was all Old Testament and all about judgment and pain and pretty much dealing with the negative side of things, but I just like these scriptures right here that I've talked about, that reveals the heart of God, the compassion of God, what He wants for us. So let's go forward. Once you turn to God, and this is out of the material, it says, once you turn to God, you can never pay or repay God for taking those shortcomings away from you. But you can take the step to make sure you walk in freedom and never go back to that unhealthy life that you used to live. So that's a good statement, big statement. The idea here is that it's a gift. We receive it. He's done it for us. And we can't repay God, but what we can do is, I'm going to use this terminology, and it may be a little spiritual, but if we go ahead and live the life of freedom that He's given us, actually, we're reflecting His glory. We're a changed person, and that affects people around us. And that does something for people around us, but that does a lot for us when we catch our reflection of us coming back from others. Does that make sense? Is that too much? So, all right, when we find ourselves unable to move forward in life, remember God is our ultimate help in clearing away the mess, okay, out of our life and making our life better. And even if we don't get the whole 10% there that Paul was talking about, even if we knock it down 1% at a time, you know, so there's only 9% left, and there's maybe 8% left, and the idea is not perfection. The idea is growth, and that's what we're talking about, growth. It'd be great just to have 90% of it out of the way. I think that's pretty.
Good start.
That's pretty awesome. So anyway, so as we continue to humble ourselves and admit our struggles and our flaws, and He will come and help us and refresh us and work in us and help us to continue in that work of recovery. Does that mean that we'll never make a mistake. We're human. We're not perfect. We're not flawless. We make mistakes, and whether we like it or not, sometimes mistakes is part of our learning process. In fact, someone told me that just recently that they had a relapse, and I said, well, what did you learn? And they were telling me some things that they learned. So, God is not put off by our foolishness. Now, those were not my words. Those were words out of our literature. And I thought that's really some really good, strong words. God is not put off by our foolishness, the foolish things that we do. You know, oftentimes we think that if I mess up, he's gonna take me out. He's gonna punish me. He's gonna whatever. Yeah, he recognizes that, but oftentimes I think about the prodigal son and how the father, I believe the father always knew where his son was, even though he basically said, I wish you were dead, give me my money. I want to do what I want to do. And I believe because the reason why I say that is because the father knew when he was going to be coming down the road. He knew he knew he was going to be coming over the horizon, and he was waiting on him. He didn't go up to the horizon. He stayed on the porch, so to speak, but he knew when he was coming. How do you know that? I think he had people watching. God has the Holy Spirit watching us all the time. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Even when you go on those DoorDash deals, he sees what's happening, right?
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes he goes before, and sometimes he comes along after and fixes stuff, right?
Oh, yeah, I've had some break-ins excluded.
I'm just speculating. I don't know nothing. Okay. Your loving Father sees what you do, but he chooses to heal you anyway. That'd be a good place to say amen, right?
Yep.
So, any comments? Suggestions?
Don't be shady.
Don't be shady? Yeah, that's a good one.
Blessings they go one by one.
Yep.
He get person when you want someone.
Okay, Zach?
That's okay, we're just waiting. When we were talking, I just had some thoughts, but I didn't wanna, cut in that, I just wanted to point out that when, you know, a lot of times when we have that, like the priest had that aha moment, and then he said, oh, I'm doomed. And that's how we all feel when we kind of come to ourselves. The truth is, we're actually headed in the right direction, and we're further along in the right direction than we were before we had that moment. But it didn't feel that way. You know,
Absolutely.
it feels like, oh, you know, this is how bad, this is the mess
I
that
done
am.
stepped in it, right?
Yeah, this is the mess that I am, but in reality, becoming aware, you're actually further along than whenever you were not aware. One thing I want to point out is,
Can I throw my statement in there? It feels worse as it's getting better. And that ties with that right there.
but that's how we all feel. We always feel like when we're becoming aware, that we're worse off than we were the moment before, but we're actually better. Because now we know we can do something about it.
Good.
I wanted just to put this out there. It's not our responsibility to yank somebody out of their false truth. And we have to be really careful of doing that. we may think, oh, well, it's really bad and dangerous because they're living in a fantasy or living a false truth, but that may be all that person has, and if you take that away from them, you know, without spending the time with them to give them something else to hang on to, then you leave them worse than when you found them. And you may think, oh, well, now they're not living in a false reality. It's great, but that's not reality. You know, and so,
MDR calls that poking holes in their wall. That means, you know, their coping mechanisms to survive, even though it may not be healthy, but it may be the only thing that's keeping them alive.
exactly. I appreciate you saying that. You know, we gotta have the relationship to be able to lean into these things. And not just think you have the relationship, but really have the relationship, you know. We're talking about being truth, so we're not gonna, you know, BS ourselves here. You know, like we're not gonna lie to ourselves, like what Paul was saying. And, you know, if you do have the relationship with somebody that you can sit with them and help them, you know, try to get closer to reality, you know, those are little increments, you know, and you have to kind of see where they want to go, because you don't change that for them, it's their truth. They have
That's
to
right.
change that for themselves. It's like, you know, they think somebody's in that room, and you have to help them become willing to open the door and see if somebody's in the room. You can tell them all day long no one's in the room, but until they're ready to open the door, not when you're ready, until they're ready to open the door, to
Right.
see that nobody's in the room. And we have to remember that, you know, when we're trying to help people, we have to really help people and care for them while we're doing it. And it's
Help
not-
them where they are,
Yeah, where they are.
not
It's
where we think they need to be.
Not on our timeline,
Okay.
it's on their timeline.
Yes, absolutely. I like that, and I've told the story before, but you remind me of a lady that I worked with 25, 30 years ago that had been in a sexual relationship with her preacher for, at that time, 20 years. And she was on the threshold of committing suicide. She was getting ready to drive her car. This, like I said, it's been many years ago, but she was gonna drive it off South Main into the river down there at Rains Mill before they put in a new highway. She's just gonna go over, and she thought, well, I'll give him a chance, and if it doesn't work, I'll do that. And and to try, I can't go into the whole story, but the point that I wanted to make here is that I know that I'll probably be criticized now by how I handle it, but, you know, so, but this, I did not tell that lady that she had to stop having sex with her preacher. Because she was too unstable. She wanted to, okay, but she wasn't able to. That's the reason why she was talking to me or thinking about suicide. Does that make sense? And so what I had to do was help her to be able to gain enough internal power to make some changes and be able to say no. She couldn't even lock her door to the front of her house, okay, because she was so much. She was so powerless in that situation. So to make a long story short, it took a year. And people think, that's ridiculous, but it did. It took a year. I had to help her learn how to lock a door. Okay.
It's kind of like stepping down from addiction. You
Yeah.
go cold turkey, sometimes it'll start to hurt.
And I had a lady one time that had been abused by her dad, and I only talked to her once, and I knew her dad was in California, so I figured, well, there's no way to confront. This is where I learned my lesson about confrontation. And because everybody thinks confrontation is going to fix it. confrontation only makes it worse. And so she called me because she called her dad, and now she was the total blame of everything, and so, you know, and because she left as soon as she could find somebody to go to, you know, she sold drugs and was a prostitute just to survive until she was able to get stable or semi-stable, and so, but, you know, her dad just went to her little sister. But the point of this deal was, she called him and confronted him on it, because she had never, ever really, it was never really real to her, even though she was suffering in pain from it. Does that make sense? How a person can be in emotional pain, but at the same time, we don't accept that. It's not real. And so it became real, and so then she became angry, which is good, but at the same time, you don't confront. And go back to this lady with the preacher, I told her right up front, this is not about confronting the preacher. It's not about destroying the preacher. It's about helping you get better. Okay, that's what it's all about. Does that make sense? And I know, you know, it's troubling. I know it's troubling. And I said, when you get better, and you don't have to, but you choose to, then you're welcome to confront. And so, it took a year. She was able to say no. She was able to break those ties, those bonds, those that was holding her, and able to be free. Like you said, it is a lot. It is addiction, because it's all addiction. Okay, so my point of that story, Zach, and thank you for bringing it up. I don't want to lose your point. Is that you know, with the old black and white thinking is, well, there's, you know, it's got to be this way and not that way, and the sad thing is, a lot of people get destroyed because of that, because in fact, she told me, if I'd have known you as a preacher, I wouldn't have came to you. And I said, well, I'm glad you didn't know. and she's still doing well, okay? So.
One thing that I think that this may sound ridiculous, but one thing that I think that would help us is that if we want to handle something or deal with something, and I know some behaviors are so destructive or they're harmful to other people, and that's not what I'm talking about. But so we put that disclaimer out there. I'm not saying that if someone's abusing somebody else or harming somebody else, that's not what I'm talking about. However, if somebody's behavior bothers you, or you don't like it, or they're even coming to you wanting help with it, is the behavior more important, or is the person more important? You know, and for a long time, you know, and if in a church setting, you could say, is the sin more important, or is the person more important? And the knee-jerk reaction would be, oh, well, the person. But what has our behavior proven? Like what you're talking about. For a long time, we cared more about the behavior than we did the person.
Yeah, and oftentimes we try, we want to do right things, but sometimes those right things can kill us. You know, we have to deal with things in a wise manner and in a loving manner. And there's a lot of illustrations that we can give, but the fact of it is, my system that I do most of the time with dealing with people is basically I listen, I try to learn, and then I I try to get enough information, like a doctor, to diagnose before I prescribe. And my prescription is not, I don't tell people what to do. I ask them if I can make a suggestion.
I think you should say that again, your process, because it's really good. People need to listen.
I listen a lot, I listen a long time. You know, and oftentimes what people tell you the first time is not what it is when you have them tell it to you the third or fourth time. And so each time they get a better understanding and you get a better understanding. And so you listen so that you can have a broad diagnosis of what's going on. And I don't with this diagnosis, I don't prescribe anything. I don't tell people what to do. And some people just say, tell me what to do. And I say, no, I don't do that. I don't do that. Sometimes I'll make a suggestion for you to think about. And before I even make the suggestion, I usually ask for permission 2 or 3 times. Are you sure you want me to talk about this? Are you sure? Are you really sure?
And we're no more sure on the third time than we were the first time you asked us, so.
Yeah, but at least it's opened up something. I feel it's opened up something. And so anyway, that's just the way I did it. Any other comments? So, what did you think about our topic tonight?
I had to hear that. I had to be here. Something told me to be here.
Good. Good. Well, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and may His face shine upon you and give you His peace. Zach, do you want to close this out? Do you want here or back there?
Well, we had a good night tonight. We're glad everybody was here, and if you're out there in internet land, we're glad that you joined us, and it was a good night tonight. We love people around here, and you probably heard some things you're not used to hearing, but you know, we care more about the person than, you know, like what Doug was talking about. You know, God doesn't get put off. You know, here at SNL, we don't get put off. And so you got to have a safe place where you can work on your stuff, and that's what SNL is. It's a safe place. And so we welcome you to come down and join us in person. It's way better in person than it is online. But
Was that sarcastic?
No.
No.
truth. That was some truth.
Oh, okay.
But
Reality.
but yeah, if you're hurting tonight and you're out there or you're in here, and just know that people love you. It may not be the people that you would have picked, but that doesn't mean that there's no one that loves you. And so if you're feeling that way, we've been talking about truth and reality tonight, and that's real. Don't buy that lie.
Not shady.
And yeah, don't be letting no one get shady on you and lie to you about, you know, that no one loves you and you're all alone, because I know you may feel that way, but I dare you to look around. It may not be who you would have picked, but I bet you got somebody. So they may drive you up a wall, but sometimes God gives us who we need, not who we want, and we're better for it. So with that being said, thanks for being here. We love you. Be safe. Good night.